Greetings all, Benny Reese West, just taking our weekly look at uranium. So I'm just going to start here with Cameco, and it's been a good week. We had some good news this week with Cameco, which has propelled prices higher. So we had this earnings update, and obviously this has been pretty good news. EPS is at 32 cents a share. It's great. And it's increased a little bit, which is good. Beat estimates, which is good. And they're making money. Revenue up 48%. That's pretty good. I mean, on the surface of it, uranium production surged 50%. That's great. That's pretty good news for Cameco. So with that in mind, obviously we've had a strong week that the markets like those earnings, and it's propelled higher. So what's next? Well, I'll just put that aside, the good news aside, on the fundamental side, and I'll just look at the patterns as I always do. And I've warned about this before, that I'm still expecting that we get the same three-wave movement. So is this a three-wave movement topping out here? I'm not 100% sure that it's topped out, but I think at this point there's a couple of these stocks. This one, UEC, and the Uranium Physical Trust, which is just putting out some warning signs. So when I say warning signs, I'm not suggesting that you jump out of the trade now and then it's all over. I'm just saying, think of it more like you're driving down a road and you see signs on the road saying, bends ahead, or ice on the road, or wildlife crossing. It doesn't mean that you stop the car. It just means that you maybe drive a little bit more cautiously. And that's what I've always sort of said, is just, have the plan, just watch the market and just watch for signs that you need to be a bit cautious. And I think we've probably, in some of these stocks, we've got some warning signs. Like, put it that way. I'm not saying that it's all over. I'm just saying that we just got to be a little bit careful at this point, because we are reaching into some areas, and some of the patterns are starting to fill out that would make me think, just be a bit careful here. So just taking this on the big view, this week we've seen tip right into this little area that I've highlighted before. So we've just touched up into here, and I've said a few times that sort of these mid 40s is just an area to watch. But if we can clear this, then obviously these peaks above look like the next points of call just to have a look at. But as we sit here, I think we've just got to be a little bit circumspect, and just keep your wits about you, and just sort of lay your plan. So let's look at this. So when I'm looking at this, one thing we can see here is that this week's volume is very good. I mean, we haven't had a volume week this big since, well, back in here in October 22, and that preceded this dump, this huge volume week where obviously a lot of people got dumped out. So that is good. There is obviously some buying going on in here, but I've highlighted this before. We've got to be careful of this, okay, because this is starting to diverge on the weekly. All right, now that's not confirmed, of course, but at the moment we do have a higher high, and the RSI hasn't gone with it. Okay, so we just need to see if we can get through this peak in the RSI. Okay, so we got a little bit to go there. One thing I will say is that, and you can see plenty of examples of it through time, is that there's nothing to say that price can't go a lot further and the RSI doesn't go with it. But the further price goes without the RSI making a new high, the stronger the warning gets. So we've just got to watch this to see what happens next week, of course. But we have touched that area, so we do have to be a bit careful there. So just skipping back out here to the big view, the one thing that I've been sort of cautioning about is this three-wave swing and looking for some sort of one-to-one move. Now, a lot depends here on how you count this. I think there's two ways to count it, but for this stage I'm counting from here and looking at this. So 100% would put us up to $50, just shy of this area. But there is a different way you could count it, which would be more finishing the impulse here and then just having this sort of big expanded B wave in what I still think is a triangle, and then becomes 1, 2. So if we did count it this way, then when you're starting to look at this, well, then you're starting to reach up to 100% here. So that's why I'm a little bit cautious. And coupled with that, you can start to make the case that perhaps 1, 2, 3, the expanded flat 4, that we're coming up here to get this fifth wave, and that is all going to tie in quite well. If this counts right, I'm not sure. It's actually not my primary. My primary actually remains this. But it's the same. I mean, whether or not this is 1, 2, or this is sort of where I was thinking is 1, 2, and then we've come up 3, the 4, and then we're coming up to get the fifth. And even like coming in close, even though this is a little bit, maybe, you've got some sort of 1, 2, and then we're coming up for 3, we get 4, we get 5, something like that. I don't want to finick around on the lower time frame counts, because I don't think it's great. But I think just on that bigger picture, that that is kind of how it looks to me like it's shaping up. Now, just to balance, there's nothing to say that we're going to get a 1-to-1 move here. I mean, this could go 161.8% and still be a 3-wave swing. But I'm struggling to see how this is anything but a triangle, which just makes me think that it's not going to extend. Well, put it this way, I don't think this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't think we're going to get that still. That's still not my base case. But there's nothing to say that that this movement is not going to extend a lot further. So what I'm saying is that this might be 1, then we get 2, then we get 3, 4, 5, like that. And, we've got an impulse, a triangle, and another impulse. So that remains to be seen, of course. But I just think, at least from this movement, is looking like being close to complete. So what that could mean is that we get the deeper pullback here, which would sort of be, you'd be thinking about at least back to here. Okay, and that would come in and test that. But we don't know if this is the top yet. It might go a little bit further. But that, I think what I'm getting at, and then even if you come down here on a daily, you can just see that we are, even though we've made these new highs, we are diverging. Okay, so it is just, like I said, it's just like bends ahead in the road. There could be wildlife on the road. There could be ice on the road. Be a bit careful, because just as things sit, this is looking like it's trying to put in a top, and we have hit into this area. So even though I would think that this is, like I said, I don't want to finick around too much on the lower time frame, but even if this is sort of 1, 2, 3, and then we've got a little bit more to go, it's just telling me that maybe we don't have a lot more to go before we're going to have a much bigger retracement and a bigger pullback. So that leads me into the physical trust, and the RSI here is telling something a bit different. But I think, like, if you just go back and look, we're pretty high historically, and like the last time we got up here, and this is what I'm talking about with warning signs and divergence. Well, I mean, we diverged here, but you can see how, even though we made this fresh high, the RSI was coming off and giving a big warning shot. So I'm just wondering if that is going to happen again here, because we are very, very hot, no doubt about it. But we're not particularly diverging yet, but you can just see this RSI is running out of gas as we make these new highs. And aside from that, you can see how we've just come up. We've sort of taken this peak out, and we haven't really had any sort of test of structure from above as yet. So we've been on a bit of a fast run here, but this weekly is just a little bit less decisive. So whether or not we're going to be able to come up and challenge these peaks this peak here remains to be seen. But we've definitely hit the first one. But even just coming in here to the daily, and I mean, what can you see? That it's just, this looks just a little bit less decisive. Maybe this is, I think the problem here is there's definitely a case you could make to say 1, 2, 3, skinny 4 or 5, and we're really starting to come off. I mean, that's just what it looks like. And then look at the RSIs, it starts to tail away. So does this mean that the cycle, the run of the cycle is done, and we're headed for a deeper correction. I mean, I think there's a pretty strong warning here that would be the case. I'm not saying that that's definitely what's going to happen, but for all the aforementioned reasons, I think you've got to be pretty cautious here. Cautious in terms of expecting further price gains straight away. And even just coming down here to a daily, I just think that the case can be made here 3, 4, 5 that we've got something that looks like 5 waves going in, and we're getting a pretty strong reaction now away from the top. So that's why I'm just saying we've just got to be a little bit cautious here. I mean, this is not perfect. You certainly wouldn't want. Well, you can see where the point of call is going to be somewhere in here. And I mean, if we come down and test here and fail, well then. I'm starting to think, well, okay, well that probably means that we're headed back down here to 20, probably sub $20 on the trust, that on the price. That's how I would read this as it sits. So just warning. It's just a warning shot. I mean, there's just things there that are telling you just to be a bit cautious. Now, one thing I wanted to do here that I forgot with Cameco is just look at the cycles and how they're forming up. So I've sort of warned that 5, 6 daily cycles before we start to fail is pretty unlikely, but it's a strong run, so that's fine. But we've got that whether or not this cycle is going to fail, I mean it's got to get below here for failure, so there's a long way to go. And as I've sort of got it mapped out, just as the median cycle, the mean cycle length would take us to about the 28th of December for a cycle low, with these being one standard deviation away from the mean. But the fact that we've run up here and it's day 29, that would start to lend itself. I mean, to have a left translated cycle, meaning that the high is made earlier in the cycle than the midpoint, and to come down here, well, that would take a pretty mighty fall. So what I'm sort of thinking is maybe we're going to get, a high here. We'll get one more cycle like that. Then we'll get another top that doesn't take this out, and then we'll fail below whichever point comes. So I'm just watching this. It's just something else that's warning me that maybe the top is imminent. Just the top of this run that we've been rallying for the best part of a year here off the low. So what I'm saying is it's just suggesting that maybe this run is getting tired. Yeah, that's how I'd put it. Now, UEC is one I've been tracking because, as I've said before, I think it's got the cleanest looking Elliott count. And again, the fact that we've taken out this high, I mean, to me, just without digging down too far, I mean, this looks like 1, 2. This is a 3 wave. It has gone far enough to qualify to be a 3. It doesn't look overly. It's gone more than 100%, but it doesn't look overly like a 3. But I just think the same thing is applying here. It's just the RSI is just cooling off, and we just look like we're running out of steam as we come in here to put 5 waves in. So once again, I wouldn't have said that we'd, whether or not we can take this peak out, I don't know. I mean, it just looks like it needs another kick to get up there, but it's just looks to me like it is starting to battle away a bit here. And these candles, I mean, it's just churning a bit here, but this is a bearish engulfing candle. But that by itself doesn't mean anything particularly. But just look at it. Just this week, it's struggled to go ahead. So it's fallen out of flavour. That's all I'd say with UEC at this point. And you can just see it now with the volumes just tailing away. It's just not garnering the amount of interest that it had as it just starts to struggle. So that's why I just think, like I said, I'm not saying bail out necessarily, but I'm just saying that this is putting in signs that's telling me that it's looking like it's getting a bit tired. Okay. Now, when you look at this on the weekly, I mean, this RSI isn't diverging hugely just yet, but you think about this peak, and then we've come up and made this new one. The RSI hasn't been able to break through its top, so that Once again, it's just a warning sign. It doesn't mean necessarily that there's an imminent big crash coming or anything like that. But all this is telling, this is just a momentum indicator. All it is telling you is that it's hot and it's starting to run out of gas. That's all that's telling you. So it's just, like I said, it's ice on the road. Just be a little bit careful here because we may not be able to come up and get this. I mean, look, I hope we do. But, you know, just be just be careful. I think that's all I could say at this point. Just be careful of this. It's just, I'm not sure it's got a huge amount left in it, but of course it could be wrong. And all I'd mean by that is if, that's still a massive, if that was going to be the top, I'd just be thinking about the retracement. It's some sort of three-wave pullback into this sort of zone. That would just be what I'll be thinking. So that's just what it's telling me as we sit here today. So as we just whiz through some of these other ones, I mean, they haven't been able to come up and take the high out, which isn't to say that they won't, but this isn't a perfect candle for URA to finish the week. But, you know, we sort of highlighted that potentially we're in a bit of an uptrend here, and we are, of course. But, you know, we just need to think maybe if that's going to make a pivot, and are we going to start putting in a downtrend channel? I mean, that we're a long way away from declaring that we've got a downtrend going on here. But, of course, it just becomes important to be able to come in and take this top out. So we've got a bit to go. But, you know, same thing. This area has been highlighted because of this peak, and we've just touched here. We need to recapture it to go further. So while it's okay, it's the same thing again. Just the momentum is waning. Okay, so just be careful. Same thing here in energy fuels. This is trending up, but this is a bearish engulfing candle. We've got to be a little bit cautious. Okay, this is not quite doing enough for me just yet, and we're just struggling to get through this area. I mean, we had a little gap here that's been filled in, but you know, this candle to finish the week's not perfect. Same thing here with Denison. Okay, we've had this area. We tried to get above it, we couldn't quite do it, and now we're just starting to back away from it. So I'm just watching this channel to see what comes next. But the same thing, we've just got to make sure that what we don't actually have coming in here is a downtrend. We're a long way away from declaring that this is a downtrend, but just you've got to look at these early warning signs. Okay, the RSI is double topped, but we haven't made a new high. Okay, so that's, I don't know how to read that particularly. That's kind of like more like a hidden divergence. We'll just leave this aside and we'll see what goes with Denison. The uranium miners ETF. I mean, we drew this last week, and it's just really respected the top of this channel so far, and this is not the best candle to finish the week on. So we'll have to see what happens. But it's the same thing again. It's, you know, we're still in this little uptrend from this low, but we don't want to see this fail. That's just what I'm watching here. Same thing here with the junior miners. We're just, even though this trend isn't very well established in terms of it doesn't have the great geometry that some of the others do, I think just coming off this low here, off this bottom, you just got to watch this line. If we start to fail below there, that's not perfect. That's not what we want. And just finishing off here on next gen. Look, this peak that we came in is sort of, you could probably tie it to this, where it's just starting to battle, but this big candle to finish the week isn't perfect. Now, just to finish off, I will just say that even though, you know, we've had overall a good week, but a bad Friday for the uranium stocks, there could be something more at play here. That something I'm going to go over more when I look at sort of in my TLT video, when I sort of look at the rates and what's going on, because obviously there's been a fairly big shift this week, and you know, the stock market in general has roared back very strongly, and that might just be sucking some of the oxygen from the uranium stocks. So it may just be that we're waning because people are cashing out of uranium to go chase something else, because you know, they could be flooding back into other stocks that look a bit more beaten down. And these uranium stocks look rich, but there'll be other stocks, particularly things like, you know, the big stocks, the Apples, the Amazons, the Googles, that people might be shifting money out of uranium and shifting it into those because they can see more upside coming. So that might just bog us down for a while. So that's kind of what I'm thinking at the moment. Like I said, those three particular stocks in terms of Cameco, the Trust, and UEC are sending out the warning signs, and these other ones haven't been able to break the top. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm sitting. So that's it for this week. Let's just see what the market gives us next week. But right now, the uptrends are in place, but the warning signs are there. That's the takeaway. So thanks for watching, and thanks to all those who have been liking and subscribing to the video. Please continue to do so. Gives me a hand. And we'll see you next week. Bye for now.